Hello everybody, welcome back. In this video, we shall look at some ideas for the rapid fire numbers or the Tux of Math game, which will make this game more interesting, which will also make you learn more about this game, and in the process, you will earn bonus points. Before we go there, however, let's recall the basic rules about the bonus, which is that bonus comes after basic. You always earn bonus. What you can do for bonus is almost endless. What earns bonus today may or may not earn you bonus in future. Bonus is your opportunity to push yourself, try out new things, amaze everybody. However, please remember rule number one, that bonus comes after basic, right? Now, I repeat this all the time. The reason is because this is so important, especially in a game like Tux of Math, because this game is generally a little bit on the harder side, right? We have used lists, we have used cloning. These lists work in a specific way. There's a lot of logic that goes around it to make it all work, right? So I urge you all to be quite familiar with that. Look at those basic concepts. Build a basic game first before you enter into the bonus territory, because once you have built the basic stuff, what you will find is that the bonus is actually very natural. All these are very natural extensions that I'm going to tell you, right? Now, we are going to give you multiple ideas. You can have your own ideas as well. Do tell us in the instruction page, right? In the project page, add instructions/description on what ideas you have tried, right? So that we are able to spot them when we are marking these, right? Now, with all this prelude, let's get started. So what are some ideas that I can think of for rapid fire numbers right now? Really, these are logical extensions for what we have done in the class. The first thing that I can think of is that the game starts to get harder and harder as it proceeds. Right now, there's really two parts of this. One is how frequently do these questions pop up, right? So remember, we have a wait time, after which a question comes. This wait time is random, but then you can play with it, right? So initially, maybe a question comes very slowly. You have a lot of time to think about it and respond. uh, Maybe after a while it becomes faster and faster, right? Similarly, you can start to increase the falling speed. Now at this point, it's important to note that if you make the falling speed too much, the game will become unplayable, right? So do not increase it beyond say 5 or 6. Change y by say -5 or -6. Do not go beyond that, because it will be very strenuous on your eyes, as well as your the entire playing experience will actually go down, right? So do this, but be a little bit careful, right? Next, you can think about adding additional operators, right? More operators than the classroom, right? So in the class, we did an add, basically, let's say 2 plus 6 is 8, uh, 8 plus 3 is 11, and so on and so forth. But you can definitely do subtraction, multiplication in addition to addition. In fact, there are other operators also you can do, but maybe subtraction and multiplication are good starting points, right? Now, you can do this in three ways. One is that you can give user a selection. Okay, so user says that, look, I want to play addition, right? So you have maybe three buttons in the beginning, and you say, okay, you select whether you want to play addition, subtraction, or multiplication. You can also do it in multiple levels. So maybe first level is addition, next level is say multiplication, third level is maybe all random. uh, and like I just said, you can do it randomly. So in the same level, you get sometimes addition, sometimes subtraction, sometimes multiplication, and so on and so forth. I'm giving you several examples which apply these ideas either across levels or in the same level or by selection, right? So pick your whatever appeals to you, you can pick from that. But the whole idea is to add more operators beyond just the add, right? So I use more operators beyond just the add. Now, when it comes to subtraction, right? uh, you may be curious, like, how do I subtract? For example, if I get a question like 3 minus 5, right? Now it turns out that actually you can do this with negative numbers, but if you are not comfortable with that yet, that's possible. You can ensure that the first number is always more than the second number, right? This is not necessary, but it will, if it helps you, if it helps you to understand the game better, you can make sure that you get a question always like, what is 5 minus 3, or let's say 8 minus 6, or 8 minus 2, right? Never 2 minus 8, right? So if you want to do that, look at this example where I've used different type of questions. I've given you a very neat trick of doing so. Also, you can look at some of those previous projects that I've just mentioned, right? Now, moving forward, you can do different type of questions, right? Remember, in the class game, we only had 2 plus, let's say a plus b equals to what, right? So essentially, like 2 plus 3, or 8 plus 1, 9 plus 8, and so on and so forth, right? But we can have questions which are a little bit more involved. For example, I've given an example here. 2 plus what is equal to 5, right? So you can have, like, two. So obviously the answer here is 3, but this makes it more interesting because you got to do more clones, you got to make more lists, and so on. But really, like I said, if you've done the basic game correctly, this will just naturally fall in place, right? The whole structure is there. You just have to extend it a little bit to get, say, different kind of questions, right? Next, you can think of avoiding duplicate answers even before the clones are formed, right? Now, what I mean here is that remember on the screen, you may have multiple questions which lead to the same answer. For example, 3 plus 4 and say 5 plus 2, both of the answer of 7, right? Now, in fact, before these clones are formed, we can check if the list answers or correct answers already contains an answer that is, that is for the present question, right? Now, if you do that check, what you will find is that at any given point in the screen, there's only one question that has a given answer, right? Now, this is actually, in a way, it makes the game a little bit easier, right? But it also allows us to do many other things, right? So it's just a nice programming practice as well to do so. So that's why I put this in a bonus, right? I will obviously talk about this in the context of the game that we did in the class, but this I thought is a very nice idea we can implement, right? Moving forward in terms of scoring, right? Now the class game, just look at the time that you lasted in this whole, in this whole game. But a very simple way to extend that would be to say, okay, look, I played for this many seconds and I got this many questions correct, right? Now notice you have 3 lives or you may have 5 lives, that's all right. But in this time, you might have answered 10 questions, 15 questions, and so on. So basically, this is also quite simple. You can keep a variable that allows you to count how many questions you have answered. Now, there's a project that I'm putting down in the description which has a lot of these ideas already implemented. You can take a look at that, use that as a reference, and then you can implement it on your own as well, right? Finally, not finally, I mean, moving forward to the clone movement, right? Now, our game in the class had just one clone movement. Basically, the clones were starting in the top and they were falling down vertically, right? Falling down like in an elevator. But you can do more. I mean, you can do different or more. So, for example, you can have a game which goes horizontally, right? So basically, clones get formed on the left side, but they move from say, left to right or right to left, whichever way you like. And before they cross over to the right side, you must answer, right? So that's one thing. You can think of having a movement which is down to up, right? I'm putting a project in the description below where some student built this game which just went in the other direction. It actually felt quite nice, right? You can combine all this by going to say crisscross movement. However, be careful again, make the game, I mean, make sure that the game is playable, which means that do not have a situation where these questions are just overlapping on each other and it gets very hard to play, right? So minimize the movement, but yeah, you can do fancy things in there. So clone movement is definitely an idea which you can do beyond just whatever we are doing in the vertical movement, right? Next, the question is about question disappearance, right? So once we answer something correctly, how does it disappear, right? Now in the class game, it just basically we delete the clone, the thing just disappears from there, right? But really, we can do some form of animation when we make these questions disappear. I mean, you can think of like some kind of graphic effects. You can put some sounds. In the, I'm putting a project in the description where I have done this in a very simple way, right? You can use that and you can build on that idea. Basically, when the question has been answered correctly, all those clones have to be deleted. Before deletion, however, I make them do a little bit of animation, right? And it looks quite nice, right? Finally, I mean, one idea that looked really cool to me, but I must say this is quite hard. Okay, so this is really, really tricky. In the present context, this game itself is hard. Now, on top of that, to do this thing called a laser shot, right? So, what I mean by this is that when I answer correctly, I see a kind of like a laser beam going and hitting the question, right? I'll show you later on in this game. I'm giving you an example code which you can use. However, this, like I said, is hard, and even I have implemented it for a situation where I have already ensured that there are no duplicate answers in the screen, right? So there's only one unique answer, and I go and shoot that answer down, right? Despite this simplification of avoiding duplicates, this is hard. This because this requires us to use lists in a very sophisticated manner. So look at this. It's for your interest, for your reference. Uh, do not worry if you can't implement it right now, right? So all right, now with this done, let's look at these ideas in context of the class game, right? Now, basically, the class game was quite nice and simple. So you have these numbers falling 5 plus 3, let's say. So I have to answer 8, then I have to answer 12, say 13, say 16, and so on and so forth. Now, this game basically is quite predictable because, I mean, it's in the sense that it doesn't become more difficult as the game goes on. The reason is because, it's always waiting for a random amount of time, which is always say between 1 and 2 seconds, right? Now, you can have a situation where you start maybe with 5 seconds, then go down to say 1 second or 2 seconds, right? So 5 seconds and 4 seconds and then 1 second. So depending on the score that you have been scoring, you can increase this. You can decrease this number. Now you can also, right? You can also in the when you start as a clone, for example, right? So over here, where is it? Yeah, when I start as a clone, so I have fixed this change y by -2. Now you can do more than this. You can maybe have this number changing. However, like I said, if you make this very fast, right? So for example, if I, let's say, made it -10 suddenly, you will find that the game is quite difficult to play and it's just doesn't feel very good, right? Because it's hard to read these numbers. uh, it doesn't feel very pleasant, right? So do not make it more than say 4 or 5, but definitely there's something you can do, right? Next, I spoke about additional operators, right? So basically our game is only doing a plus. The reason is because that's the only extra costume we have given it, but there's no restriction that we must limit it to this. We can also have a situation where maybe I have additional costumes like minus or multiply and so on and so forth, and I implement those. Right now, really the trick, or the difficult part of all of that is getting this correct answers correct. Right now, notice when we did addition, it was temp1 plus temp2 -2. The -2 because of the costumes, right? So when we say costume 1, it's actually number 0. If you do multiply or an addition, or a subtraction, for example, then this thing really has changed, because if you are doing multiplication, it's probably going to be temp1 -1 times temp2 -1. Depends again on how you named the costumes and so on and so forth. So the trick really is making sure, right? Making sure that you visualize this list called answers, basically make it available, and make sure that when these numbers are falling, the correct answer is getting populated, right? Now, this is where the whole game is. This is very, very important. When you do subtraction, right? Subtraction, you can make sure that so for example, when I do let's say I want to say temp1 minus temp2, basically number 1 minus number 2, I can make sure that the first number is always larger than the second number. Right now, there's a trick that I've done in the other game. I'll show you that game, so that it's somewhat clearer to you, but it's not necessary to do this, but you can certainly do something like that, right? Next, I spoke of some different kind of questions, right? So what I've done here is to put together a project where I'll get asked a question, which is, for example, notice 6 plus what is equal to 9, right? So 6 plus 7 plus what is equal to, so I have to answer 1. 4 plus say 3, right? 3 plus 5 and 3 plus 1 and so on and so forth, right? So here what I have done is that I have added extra costumes for my, for my sprite. Basically a question mark, like a addition was already there, right? And a equal to sign. I have also created more lists, right? Because remember, these are also clones, right? These are basically like, we have equal to question mark and so on. They are also clones, so they also need to go to the same process. They get their own IDs. They also get deleted and so on and so forth, right? So I've done all of that. And also in here, for example, I'm making sure that temp2 is always more than temp1. The reason is because I do not want to, so for example, 0 plus something is 8, right? 7 plus something is 8. So I'm making sure the number on the right is always more than the number on the left. And the way I do that is by ensuring that I play with these random number, the range of these random numbers. You can look at this. I have put a lot of comments on this. And I think once you get this, like I said, the basic structure is clear. This game will actually follow quite naturally. Of course, there are changes in lots of places because we do this. We also have to prune these lists, which means you have to remove the extra close that we are generating and so on. But the basic structure remains the same, right? Look at this, right? Now, a lot of other things that I spoke about, for example, using different, let's say, avoiding duplicates before questions are formed, right? Uh, as well as scoring, movement of clone, right? Question disappearance and laser shot I've implemented in this game here, right? So I'll just go through these things one by one. Again, I put a lot of comments for you, though some of this is not easy, right? So especially the laser shot is actually not very easy, right? But let's just see this game. It's just a variation from the class game, right? So what happens here is that these clones are coming down. So for example, 0 plus 1, if I answer 1, notice a shot goes out and it hits the, so 1 plus 8 is 9, 4 plus 0 is 4, 6 plus 7 is 13, 15, right? 5, and 13, and so on and so forth, right? So here I'm doing a lot of things. First of all, I'm ensuring that I never get a question whose answer is repeated, which means on the screen I get every question has a unique answer. And the way I do that, right, is that before I admit these clones into my system, right, notice I generate temp1 plus temp2. I already know what the correct answer to this question is. Before I make these clones, I look at the list called answers, or say correct answers. If the list already contains these, then I do not create this clone. I create this clone only when the list does not create, right? So having this basically ensures that I do not get repeated answers, right? Next, I talked about scoring. So in scoring, well, all I've done is that when I get this, when I basically go down, so when I basically answer a correct question, I just keep incrementing a variable called answered correctly, right? So I know how many questions I answered correctly. Uh, Clone movement, I did not do much, but really, you can play with the X and Y positions here. But more importantly, I have done this thing called animation on the question disappearance, right? And how I did that was, well, a very simple animation. Once I know that this particular clone is going to get deleted, so this was already part of the code. I just added this little bit of a, animation here. It's a simple one. So I just move these X and Y randomly. That's why you notice that when I get a number, for example, 9 plus 9, I shoot it, it kind of moves around a bit. It looks nice, right? There are other animations you can think about. So let's say 5, right, 6, and this is what I've done right now. Finally, the thing that I wanted to show in this project is this thing called laser shot. The way I have done it is that, and this is not easy, by the way. Okay, so I've written comments here, but basically the idea is that along with all these lists that I have, I also maintain lists of where these question groups are, right? So, for example, these question groups are falling. So I make sure that when this answer is answered correctly, where this particular question was. So that is done through these lists called X questions, X positions, and Y positions. Uh, I, of course, basically make sure that I figure out this X and Y position. I call this target X and target Y, and I broadcast a message called shoot. This goes to another sprite which just draws a line from a particular point to the point where the sprite was, right? Where this questions was, right? Like I said, this is not easy. Do look at it because this involves a lot of list manipulation, especially this portion, right? I've tried to explain some comments. We'll be happy to answer these in more detail. A little bit tricky, but quite interesting because it looks quite fascinating, right? So, in short, there's lots of ideas you can do. There's, as always, there's many things you can do, but most important is try to enjoy the process, try to be systematic about it, and you will really see that your creative juices are coming out, right? All right, then, take care. Thank you very much. Bye bye.